don't. His hand caught her throat before she could finish. You shouldn't look at me like that. Chains rattled. Blood dripped from where the silver bit her wrists. Like what? His grip tightened. Like you're not afraid. 17 women before her. All dead in 3 days. She had 72 hours left. Before we go further, stop. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. This cursed king, this impossible choice, would you stay? Would you fight a curse that's killed 17 women just to save him? Or would you run the second those chains hit your wrists? Team break the curse or team save yourself? Comment below. We need to know. The chains bit into Ivy's wrists as the guards shoved her forward. She stumbled, her bare feet scraping against stone that had seen too much blood. The throne room stretched endlessly before her, torches casting dancing shadows that made the tapestries on the walls seem alive, writhing with scenes of old battles and older magic. Everything in this place screamed of death dressed up as ceremony. Closer. Thaddeus didn't raise his voice, but the command hit like a physical blow. The guards obeyed immediately, dragging Ivy until she stood at the base of the dais. Close enough to see the fine scars crossing his knuckles. Close enough to smell leather and steel and something darker underneath, old pain, maybe. Old rage. She forced herself to look up. Made herself meet those eyes that had been the last thing 16 women saw before they died screaming. But instead of the monster from the stories, she found something infinitely more dangerous, a man who looked tired. Achingly, devastatingly tired. Do you know why you're here? His words were carefully neutral, but his hands gripped the throne's arms hard enough to make the metal groan. I was told, her voice cracked. She swallowed, tried again. They said you need another offering. Offering. He tasted the word like it was poison. Is that what they're calling it now? He stood, and the movement was pure predatory grace. When he descended the dais steps, the guards actually stepped back, their fear palpable in the suddenly thick air. Let me be clearer, Ivy Clearwater. You're here to die. Slowly, painfully, while I watch the light drain from your eyes and feel absolutely nothing. That's what happens. That's what always happens. Then why do you keep doing it? The question escaped before she could stop it. Stupid. Suicidal. But his eyes widened fractionally, as if no one had ever dared ask. Because, he said slowly, if I don't, the curse spreads. If I don't feed it one life, it takes 100. 1,000. So I choose. His jaw clenched. I choose one over many. I choose to be the monster so they can pretend to be safe. Ivy's mind raced. This wasn't what the stories said. The stories painted him as a sadist, a beast drunk on power and death. But standing here, seeing the genuine self-loathing in his expression, she realized something that made her blood run cold. Thaddeus Bloodworth hated himself more than anyone else possibly could. What if I don't want to die? She said quietly. No one does. He turned away, dismissing her. Take her to the Western Tower. She has 3 days. Make them comfortable. Wait, but the guards were already pulling her backward. My family. You promised them gold, medicine. Thaddeus stopped mid-step. Your family. My mother. She's dying. My brother, he's only 8, and he hasn't eaten in. Ivy's voice broke. They said if I came willingly, you'd pay enough to save them. Was that a lie? The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Marcus. A new figure emerged from the shadows, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who'd seen centuries pass. Sent physicians to the Clearwater cottage. Enough gold to last them 10 years. Food, firewood, everything. Your Majesty, Marcus began, surprise evident in his tone. Now. As the guards dragged her out, Ivy looked back once. Thaddeus had returned to his throne, but his hands shook where they gripped the armrests. And for just a moment, their eyes met again. This time, she saw what she'd missed before: desperation. Terrible, aching desperation. He didn't want to kill her. He just didn't know how to stop. The Western Tower was not a cell. That was the first surprise. Ivy had expected dungeons, chains, darkness. Instead, she found herself in chambers fit for royalty: plush carpets, a fire already crackling in the hearth, a bed that looked softer than any dream she'd ever had. Through the tall windows, she could see the city sprawling below, tiny lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. Why, she whispered to the empty room. Why the kindness? Why the comfortable execution? A knock interrupted her thoughts. She spun to find a woman standing in the doorway, slight, with sharp eyes and silver threading through her dark hair. "I'm Sarah," the woman said, carrying in a tray of food that made Ivy's stomach clench with hunger. "The king's, well, I suppose you'd call me his keeper of secrets." She set the tray down with deliberate care. "You should eat. The transformation is easier on a full stomach." Transformation? Ivy's pulse quickened. What transformation? Sarah's expression was unreadable. "That's the part they never tell the offerings, isn't it? You don't just die. You change first. The curse tries to consume you. Turn you into something else. Something that will hurt him enough to satisfy its hunger." She moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening sky. "The pain, from what I've observed, is extraordinary." Ivy sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because maybe," Sarah turned, and her eyes held something almost like hope. "Maybe if you know, you can fight it." The others, they went in blind. Terrified. The curse fed on that fear, used it. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, kneeling beside Ivy. "But you asked him why." "No one asks him why. They beg, they cry, they try to run. But you looked at him and saw a man, not a monster." "I saw someone in pain," Ivy said softly. "Someone carrying something too heavy." "Exactly." Sarah's grip on Ivy's hand tightened. "The curse, it's not random. It's specific. It's punishment, for his bloodline, for his ancestors' sins. But curses have rules. They always do. And this one." She hesitated. "This one can only be broken by someone who chooses him. Not the crown, not the power. Him. Chooses him how? That's the question, isn't it?" Sarah stood, smoothing her skirts. 17 women have tried to survive these 3 days. 17 have failed. Most barely made it to the second sunrise. The curse transforms them into something, creatures of rage and pain, and when they attack him, driven mad by the change, he's forced to. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Ivy's mind spun. If it's about choice, about seeing him, then why does the curse trigger at all? Why the 3 days? "Because," a deep voice said from the doorway, making both women jump, "it's a test." Thaddeus stood there, looking somehow more human away from his throne. He'd removed the formal armor, dressed now in simple black that made him look younger, more vulnerable. The curse is testing whether the person can see past the monster to the man. Whether they'll choose to stay even when they know what's coming. "You're not supposed to be here," Sarah said sharply. "The proximity accelerates the transformation." "I know." His eyes never left Ivy's face. "But I owed her the truth." He stepped into the room, and Ivy noticed he was careful to keep distance between them, as if his very presence was dangerous. "I didn't ask for this. Any of this. I was 10 when the curse took hold. I watched my father die from it, watched my mother try everything to break it. She threw women at me like kindling to a fire, desperate to find one who could survive." His laugh was bitter. "She died thinking I was a lost cause. Maybe I am. What happened when you were 10? Ivy found herself asking. Thaddeus moved to the window, his profile sharp against the darkening sky. "My family, for generations, we ruled through fear. Through brutality. We took mates like possessions, discarded them when they failed to produce the right heirs. My great-grandfather, he was the worst. Killed his own mate when she bore him daughters instead of sons. The moon goddess, she appeared to him the night he did it. Told him that his bloodline would be cursed, that we would never know true love, never have a mate who could survive our touch, until one of us learned what it meant to choose love over power. His shoulders tensed. Every generation since has tried to break it. Every generation has failed. So you just accepted it? Ivy couldn't keep the frustration from her voice. Decided to be the monster they expected? He whirled on her, and for the first time, she saw real anger flash in his eyes. I tried everything else first. I isolated myself. I refused to take offerings. You know what happened? The curse spread. It jumped to my guards, my servants, anyone close to me. I watched 20 people die in agony because I was trying to be noble. His voice dropped to something raw and broken. So yes, I accepted it. I take one life every few months to save thousands. I let them call me monster. I let them fear me. Because at least then, when I look in the mirror, I can tell myself I'm doing the lesser evil. The room fell silent except for the crackle of fire. Ivy processed this, turned it over in her mind. Then, your mother threw women at you to break the curse. But did she ever ask what you wanted? Did any of them ever ask who you were behind the crown? Thaddeus stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. What I wanted was irrelevant. No. Ivy stood, closing the distance between them despite Sarah's sharp intake of breath. That's where everyone's been getting it wrong. The curse can't be broken by someone chosen for you. It has to be broken by someone who chooses you. But you have to choose them back. You have to want to be chosen. I don't understand. Do you want to break the curse? Ivy pressed. Not because it's duty, not because it would save others. Do you, Thaddeus Bloodworth, want to be free of this? Want to be seen as something other than a monster? His breath hitched. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and she saw it again, that recognition. That impossible sense that they'd somehow been moving toward this moment through all the darkness and blood. Yes, he finally whispered. God help me, yes. Then we have 3 days, Ivy said, her heart hammering but her voice steady. 3 days to figure out how to break a curse that's lasted 100 years. I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if I'll survive. But I know that if we don't try, if we just accept this, then 17 women died for nothing and you'll keep dying inside with every offering that follows. Sarah moved to stand beside Ivy, and Ivy realized the older woman was smiling, small, but genuine. I've been waiting 30 years to hear someone say that to him. 30 years? Ivy blinked. I was the 5th offering, Sarah said quietly. I survived 4 days before he was forced to end it. But in those 4 days, I saw enough to know the curse could be broken. He saved me at the last moment, pulled me back from the brink. I was changed, but alive. I stayed because someone needed to witness this. Someone needed to believe he was worth saving. Ivy's mind reeled. 4 days. You lasted 4 days. How? I fought, Sarah said simply. Not against him. Against the curse. I refused to let it make me hate him. Even when the pain was unbearable, when the transformation was tearing me apart, I held on to who I was. Who he was. She looked at Thaddeus with something like maternal affection. It wasn't enough to break the curse completely, but it was enough to show that resistance was possible. Why didn't anyone know? Ivy demanded. Why keep that secret? Because if people knew the offerings could survive, they'd send more, Thaddeus said roughly. They'd weaponize it. Turn it into some sick competition. At least this way, with everyone believing death is certain, only the desperate come. Only the ones with no other choice. Like me, Ivy said softly. Like you. He moved closer, his hand rising as if to touch her face, then dropping. I don't want you to die, Ivy Clearwater. For the first time in my goddamned life, I don't want this. But I don't know how to stop it. Then we learn, Ivy said. We have 3 days. Let's not waste them. The first day passed in a blur of old books and older magic. Sarah brought them to the Royal Library, a massive chamber lined floor to ceiling with volumes that smelled of dust and desperate hope. They pored over accounts of the curse, looking for loopholes, for patterns in how previous offerings had died. Here, Thaddeus said, pointing to a passage in a crumbling tome. The curse feeds on fear and isolation. It grows stronger when the afflicted is alone, when they believe themselves unlovable. His finger traced the faded words. But it weakens with genuine connection. With vulnerability freely given. So the physical distance you keep from people, Ivy began, might actually be making it stronger, he finished, frustration evident. I've been doing everything wrong. Not wrong, Sarah interjected. Understandable. But yes, counterproductive. She pulled out another book, this one bound in silver. The transformation, it's designed to make you afraid of the offering. To make them seem monstrous so you'll kill them without hesitation, feeding the curse's need for tragedy. But if you can see past the transformation, if you can remember the person underneath. I've tried, Thaddeus said, his voice cracking. With every single one, I tried to remember they were people. It didn't stop the curse from consuming them. Because they didn't remember themselves, Ivy realized. The curse twisted them so completely, they forgot who they were. Lost themselves to the pain and the change. She looked up at Thaddeus. But what if I don't forget? What if I hold on to myself no matter what the curse does? The pain, he shook his head sharply. Ivy, Sarah was strong, trained. She barely made it 4 days. You're stubborn, Ivy finished. I'm stubborn. And I've lived with pain before. Not like this, I know, but... She thought of her mother's illness, her brother's hunger, the helplessness of watching them suffer while she could do nothing. I've learned to survive impossible things. To find reasons to keep going even when everything says to give up. Thaddeus studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected, he laughed. Quiet, almost disbelieving. You know what's terrifying? I actually believe you might do it. Ivy corrected. We might do it. This isn't just on me to survive, Thaddeus. You have to meet me halfway. You have to be willing to let someone in, to let someone see the parts of you that you've kept hidden under all that guilt and self-hatred. I don't know if I remember how. Then we'll figure that out too. She reached across the table, her hand hovering over his. May I? He stared at her hand like it was a weapon. The curse hasn't triggered yet. We're still in day 1. And according to this, she tapped the silver book, physical contact during the first day can actually help build resilience to the transformation. She waited, keeping her hand steady despite the tremor of fear running through her. Trust me? I don't trust myself. Good thing I'm not asking you to. She moved her hand closer. Trust that I know what I'm risking. Trust that I'm choosing this with open eyes. He moved so slowly she could have counted the heartbeats. When his fingers finally brushed hers, she felt it, a pulse of dark energy, like static before a storm. But underneath it, something else. Warmth. The simple, human warmth of skin against skin. Thaddeus's eyes widened. You're not burning? Transforming? Dying? Ivy smiled despite the strange tingling in her fingertips. Not yet. Though I admit, this feels decidedly weird. Sarah leaned forward, her expression intense. The curse is testing you. Both of you. It wants to see if you'll pull away, if fear will win. She gestured for them to maintain contact. Keep going. Let it see that you're not afraid. I'm absolutely terrified, Ivy admitted, even as she laced her fingers through his. That's called being sane, Thaddeus said, but he didn't pull away. His thumb traced small circles on her palm, the gesture unconscious, almost protective. The transformation usually begins in the hands. Claws, first. Then the pain spreads inward. Cheerful thought. I want you to know what to expect. If we're doing this, if we're really trying, you need to know what's coming. So he told her. Told her everything he'd witnessed over the years, the physical changes, the psychological torment, the way the curse seemed to find each woman's deepest fear and use it against them. He described it with clinical precision, but Ivy could hear the anguish underneath every word. This man had been forced to watch people suffer and die 17 times over, and it had carved him hollow. Enough, she said finally, when his voice started to shake. I understand. It's going to be horrible. But Thaddeus, she tightened her grip on his hand. I've decided something. I'm going to be the first offering who doesn't just fight to survive. I'm going to fight to break this curse. For you. For all the women who came before me. For whoever might come after if we fail. Why? The question was almost a plea. Why would you do this for a stranger? For a monster? Because you're not a monster. You're a man who's been carrying an impossible burden alone for too long. She smiled, and it wasn't forced. And because someone told me once that the bravest thing you can do is choose kindness in a world full of cruelty. My mother said that, right before I left. She said, Ivy, baby, don't let them make you hard. Don't let them steal your softness. So I won't. I'll choose to see you. I'll choose to believe this curse can be broken. And I'll choose to fight like hell to make it happen. Sarah wiped at her eyes, turning away. Thaddeus just stared at Ivy like she'd grown a second head. Finally, he said, Your mother sounds formidable. She is, Ivy said fiercely. And I'm going back to her. We both are. You're going to meet her, and my brother, and they're going to see that the Monster King is actually just a decent man dealt a shit hand by fate. Language, he said automatically, then seemed to realize what he'd done and smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. Sorry. Old habit. My mother was very particular about propriety. The same mother who threw women at you like sacrificial lambs? She was complicated. His smile faded. Desperate, mostly. Watching the curse destroy me was destroying her. She thought if she could just find the right person, someone strong enough or special enough, it would all be fixed. She never understood that it wasn't about finding the right person. It was about me being the right person. About learning to believe I deserved to be saved. And do you? Ivy challenged. Do you believe you deserve to be saved? The question hung in the air between them. Thaddeus opened his mouth, closed it. Tried again. I want to, he finally whispered. That's new. For the longest time I just wanted it to end. Wanted the curse to consume me completely so I could stop hurting people. But now. His eyes met hers. Now I want to live. And that terrifies me more than dying ever did. Good, Ivy said. Because we're going to live. Both of us. Together. And this curse, this ancient, dramatic, overblown curse can just. The clock struck midnight, and Ivy gasped as pain lanced through her hand. She looked down to see her fingers beginning to darken, veins standing out like black lightning under her skin. The transformation had begun. Ivy, Thaddeus tried to pull away, but she held firm. No, she gritted out through the pain. No, this is exactly what it wants. It wants us afraid. It wants us separated. The darkness was spreading up her arm now, and the pain, Sarah hadn't lied. It was extraordinary. Like being unmade from the inside out. Talk to me. Tell me something. Anything. Help me remember who I am. You're Ivy Clearwater, he said immediately, his voice urgent. You grew up in a cottage by the eastern woods. Your favorite food is honey cakes because your grandmother used to make them every Sunday. You sing when you think no one's listening, and you're terrible at it, but you don't care because it makes your brother laugh. He was pulling information from the file they'd compiled on her, the standard background on all offerings, but he made it sound personal. Intimate. You're fierce and stubborn and kind even when kindness isn't easy. You're the person who looked at a monster and saw a man. You're the woman who's going to break this curse. You're Ivy. You're you. Hold on to that. The pain peaked, then slowly, so slowly, began to recede. The darkness in her veins faded back to normal. Ivy sagged forward, gasping, and found herself caught against Thaddeus's chest. He'd moved without thinking, arms coming around her to keep her upright. You did it, Sarah breathed. You pushed through the first transformation. Ivy, do you understand what this means? That I'm absolutely getting those honey cakes when this is over, Ivy mumbled into Thaddeus's shirt. She could feel his heartbeat against her cheek, racing, terrified, human. Also that day one is done and I'm still me. So that's something. That's everything, Thaddeus said roughly. His arms tightened around her, careful, as if she might break. That's absolutely everything. Day 2 dawned with unexpected complications. Ivy woke to shouting in the courtyard below her tower. She dragged herself to the window, body still aching from the previous night's transformation, and found chaos, guards assembled in formation, nobles gathered in tight clusters, and at the center of it all, a man in purple robes gesticulating wildly. Who's that? She asked Sarah, who'd come in bearing breakfast. Lord Darius, Sarah said, her tone carefully neutral. The king's chief advisor. He's been lobbying to discontinue the offering system, says it makes the kingdom look barbaric. But between you and me, she leaned closer, he wants Thaddeus to look weak. To seem like he can't control the curse. Darius has been positioning his own family to take the throne if Thaddeus is deemed unfit to rule. So he'd prefer the curse just spread unchecked? He'd prefer chaos he can exploit. Sarah set down the tray. The timing of his protest today is suspicious. He knows you survived day 1. That's unprecedented in recent history. He'll want to undermine it, make it seem like a fluke. As if summoned by their words, the door burst open and Thaddeus strode in, anger radiating from every line of his body. Get dressed. We have a situation. 10 minutes later, Ivy found herself in the throne room again, this time standing beside Thaddeus rather than in chains before him. The assembled nobles whispered behind jeweled fans, their eyes hungry for scandal. Lord Darius stood at the front, his expression a mask of concern that didn't quite hide his satisfaction. Your Majesty, Darius began, his voice carrying through the chamber, I must protest this experiment. The offering system exists for a reason. To deviate from it, to harbor hope, only leads to greater suffering when that hope is inevitably crushed. The offering survived day 1, Thaddeus said flatly. That's not deviation. That's progress. Or luck. Darius spread his hands. We've seen women last into the second day before. It means nothing. And parading her around the court, giving people false hope that the curse might be broken, it's cruel. When she dies, as she will, the kingdom's faith in you dies with her. Ivy felt Thaddeus tense beside her. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. And what do you suggest, Lord Darius? That we simply accept the curse? That we stop trying to break it because trying involves risk? The room went silent. Darius's eyes narrowed. The offering speaks now? How improper. What's improper is your assumption that I'm already dead, Ivy shot back. I'm standing right here. I have a name, Ivy Clearwater. I have a family waiting for me. And I have no intention of becoming a statistic in your political calculations. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Darius's mask of concern slipped, revealing something harder underneath. Noble sentiments. But sentiments don't break curses, girl. Power does. Ancient magic does. Not, he gestured dismissively at her, hope. Then let me ask you something, Ivy said, and she was surprised by how steady her voice was. If hope is so useless, why are you afraid of it? Why rush to extinguish it before it even has a chance to grow? I'm not afraid. You are, Thaddeus interjected quietly. Because if Ivy breaks this curse, if she succeeds where 17 others failed, it means change is possible. And change is dangerous for people who profit from the status quo. Darius's face flushed red. Your Majesty, I have served your family for 30 years. And in those 30 years, have you ever once suggested trying something different? Consulting different sources? Or have you simply managed the tragedy, made it efficient, acceptable? Thaddeus descended the dais, and several nobles stepped back. I've been going through the archives. Did you know my grandfather once found a text suggesting the curse could be weakened through sustained contact, through building genuine emotional bonds? He wanted to try it. You advised against it. Said it was too risky, too uncertain. It was. My grandfather died 3 months later when the curse spread to his heart. We'll never know if that text might have saved him. Thaddeus's voice dropped to something dangerous. But you were right about one thing, Darius. The offering system needs to end. Not because it's barbaric, though it is, but because it's never been the solution. It's been a stopgap. A way to manage symptoms while ignoring the disease. The room erupted in whispers. Darius looked like he'd been struck. You would risk the entire kingdom on a peasant girl's stubborn refusal to die on schedule? I would risk everything on the chance that we've been fighting this wrong for 100 years, Thaddeus said. And yes, on Ivy's courage. Because she's shown more bravery in 2 days than this entire court has shown in decades. Ivy felt warmth bloom in her chest even as another wave of pain hit, the curse, reminding her it was still there, still fighting. She swayed slightly, and Thaddeus's hand immediately went to her elbow, steadying her. She's transforming, Darius said with undisguised satisfaction. Look, the curse is taking her. All of this theater, and she'll die like the rest. Then at least she'll die trying, said a new voice. Ivy turned to see her brother, Torin, standing in the doorway with Marcus beside him. Her brother looked healthier than she'd seen him in years, clean clothes, good food evident in his less hollow cheeks. But his eyes were fierce. My sister is the bravest person I know. And if she says she can break this curse, I believe her. The child's opinion is irrelevant, Darius began. The child is her family, Thaddeus cut in. And if she's going through this hell, they have every right to be here. He nodded at Marcus. Bring them forward. Torin raced across the throne room and crashed into Ivy, hugging her with 8-year-old desperation. You're okay, he said into her shoulder. They said you'd be dead by now, but you're okay. I'm okay, Ivy managed, ignoring the spreading darkness climbing her spine. How's Mama? Better, Torin said, pulling back with a watery smile. The physicians came like the king promised. They gave her medicine, and she ate yesterday, actually ate. She was worried about you, though. She said to tell you, he paused, remembering, don't let them steal your softness. Ivy's eyes burned. I won't. I promise. Marcus stepped forward, his ageless face grave. Your Majesty, there's been a development. While researching the curse's origins at your request, I found something in the oldest archives. The original curse was dual-natured, it would destroy those who approached with fear or selfish intent, but it would bond with someone who approached with genuine love and willing sacrifice. We knew that part, Thaddeus said impatiently. Yes, but we missed something crucial. Marcus produced a scroll, its edges brown with age. The curse doesn't just test the offering. It tests the bearer. You, Your Majesty, must also make a sacrifice. Something that proves you value the offering above your own power, your own safety. The curse is about breaking cycles of selfishness. It demands selflessness from both parties. The throne room fell deathly quiet. Thaddeus looked at Marcus, then at Ivy, understanding dawning in his eyes. What kind of sacrifice? That's the part the text doesn't specify, Marcus admitted. It says the bearer will know when the moment comes. It will be the hardest choice they've ever made. And if they choose correctly, the curse breaks. If not, we all die, Ivy finished. The pain was getting worse now, the transformation pushing deeper. She could feel something trying to change her from the inside, trying to make her forget why she was here, forget who Thaddeus was beyond the crown. We should go. I need to. You need to rest, Thaddeus said. He looked at the assembled nobles, at Darius's smug expression, and made a decision. Court is dismissed. This offering will continue under my direct supervision. Anyone who has concerns can address them in writing. His tone made it clear what he thought of those concerns. Now get out. They scattered like leaves before wind. Back in the tower, the transformation hit with a vengeance. Ivy felt her bones shifting, her skin stretching, everything in her body trying to become something else. Something that would attack Thaddeus. Something that would force him to kill her and feed the curse's need for tragedy. Stay with me, Thaddeus said, holding her hands even as they morphed into something between human and beast. Ivy, listen to my voice. You're stronger than this. You're. It hurts, she gasped. Thaddeus, it hurts so much, I can't. You can. You are. He was on his knees beside her bed, refusing to let go even as her claws drew blood from his palms. Tell me about your brother. Tell me what you'll do when this is over. The pain crested, and for a moment, Ivy forgot words, forgot everything except the burning need to make it stop. The curse whispered to her, kill him. Kill him and the pain ends. He's the source. End him. No, she gritted out. No, you don't get to make me kill him. You don't get to win. That's it, Thaddeus said fiercely. Fight it. Remember who you are. I'm Ivy, she panted. I'm Ivy Clearwater. I have a mother recovering from fever and a brother who needs me. I have a favorite food and a terrible singing voice, and the pain doubled, and she screamed, her body arching off the bed. Thaddeus did something then that no one had ever done during a transformation. He climbed onto the bed and pulled her against him, wrapping his arms around her changing form despite the danger, despite the claws and the curse madness. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you, and I'm not letting go. Transform all you want. Grow claws, grow fangs, become whatever the curse needs you to be. I'll hold you through all of it. You'll die, Ivy managed. Then we'll die together, he said simply. But I don't think that's how this story ends. I think you're going to beat this. I think we're going to break this curse. And then I'm going to spend however long you'll let me making up for every moment of pain you're enduring right now. The curse roared in her ears, demanding blood, demanding violence. But underneath it, Ivy felt something else, that warmth she'd felt when they first touched, growing stronger. The bond. Not the curse's twisted version, but something real. Something chosen. She focused on that warmth, used it to anchor herself. Slowly, agonizingly, the transformation began to reverse. Her claws retracted. Her bones shifted back to their proper places. The madness receded like a tide going out, leaving her gasping and exhausted but still herself. 2 days, Sarah said from the doorway, her voice awed. You survived 2 days, and you're still conscious. Still you. Ivy, this is unprecedented. It's because of him, Ivy said, not taking her eyes off Thaddeus's face. He's not just enduring the curse. He's fighting it with me. We're fighting it together, Thaddeus corrected. His hands were still bleeding where her claws had caught him, but he didn't seem to notice or care. One more day. One more transformation. Can you do it? Can you? Ivy countered. Marcus said you need to make a sacrifice. Something that proves you value me above your power. What if the choice tears you apart? Then it tears me apart, he said. But at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have chosen something other than guilt and isolation. He touched her face gently, reverently. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, Ivy. Hope. The belief that I could be more than this curse. Even if we fail, even if tomorrow I lose you like I lost all the others, at least I'll have had these 2 days. At least I'll have known what it felt like to be seen. You're not going to lose me, Ivy said fiercely. We're breaking this curse. All of it. And then you're going to meet my mother, and she's going to love you because she stopped, the words catching in her throat. Because you what? He asked softly. Because I think I might, she whispered. Love you. Or be falling toward it, anyway. Which is insane because it's been 2 days, and one of them has been mostly agony, but… He kissed her. Cut off her rambling with a kiss that tasted like hope and desperation and the kind of choice that changes everything. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I think I might love you too, he said. And you're right, it's insane. But then again, we're trying to break a century-old curse with nothing but stubbornness and spite, so I think insanity might be on brand for us. Ivy laughed, even though everything hurt. Tomorrow, then. Day 3. We finish this. Together, he agreed. But outside the tower, Lord Darius stood in the shadows, watching the lights in Ivy's window. His face twisted with frustration. If they broke the curse, if Thaddeus proved he could overcome his family's legacy, Darius's carefully laid plans would crumble. He'd been working for years to destabilize the kingdom, to position his own bloodline to take over when Thaddeus inevitably fell. He couldn't let that happen. Darius pulled a vial from his robes, dark liquid that gleamed like oil in the moonlight. Blood magic. Illegal, dangerous, but effective. A little of this in the morning tea, and Ivy's transformation would accelerate beyond anyone's ability to stop it. She'd die like the others. And Thaddeus, broken by yet another failure, would finally be vulnerable enough to overthrow. Yes. That would work nicely. Day 3 arrived with thunder shaking the very foundations of Blackstone Keep. Ivy woke already screaming, the transformation hitting before she'd even opened her eyes. This was it, the final test, the breaking point where every other offering had failed. Thaddeus, she gasped, but he was already there, had apparently been there all night, keeping watch. I'm here, he said, taking her hand even as it began to change. Ivy, focus on me. We're going to. The door burst open. Marcus stumbled in, his ageless face showing genuine fear for the first time. Poison, he gasped. Someone poisoned her tea this morning. It's accelerating the transformation, making the curse exponentially stronger. What? Thaddeus's head snapped up. Who? Darius, Sarah said, appearing behind Marcus. Guards found the vial in his chambers. Your Majesty, he's trying to sabotage the breaking. But Ivy was beyond hearing them. The poison had mixed with the curse, and now the transformation was consuming her faster than she could fight it. She felt herself slipping away, felt the curse trying to puppet her body, trying to make her into the weapon that would kill Thaddeus and perpetuate the cycle. Kill him, the curse whispered. He's why you're in pain. End him. End this. Let go. No, she said, but her voice was changing, becoming something guttural and wrong. Her body was betraying her, moving without her permission, claws extending toward Thaddeus's throat. Get out, Thaddeus ordered Marcus and Sarah. Both of you, now. Your Majesty, Sheol. I said out. They fled. The door slammed shut. And Ivy, trapped in her own body, watched in horror as her cursed form lunged at the man she'd come to love. Thaddeus didn't run. Didn't defend himself. He stood there, arms at his sides, and said, I'm not going to fight you, Ivy. I'm not going to hurt you. If this curse needs blood, it can have mine. But I'm done feeding it innocent lives. No, Ivy screamed inside her own head. No, don't give up, don't let it win. Her claws stopped an inch from his throat. Every instinct, every ounce of curse madness demanded she complete the strike. But Thaddeus just looked at her with those tired, kind eyes, and said, I choose you, Ivy Clearwater. Not the crown. Not the kingdom. You. If the sacrifice Marcus mentioned is my life, then so be it. At least this way, the curse dies with me. At least no one else will suffer. And Ivy understood. This was his sacrifice, not just his life, but his acceptance that he was worth choosing. The curse had kept him isolated by convincing him he was unlovable, that anyone who tried to love him would suffer. By choosing to let her kill him rather than hurt her, he was choosing love over self-preservation. Over everything. But that meant she had to make her own choice. With every shred of will she possessed, Ivy wrenched control back from the curse. Her claws retracted. Her body shook as she fought the transformation, fought the poison, fought everything pushing her toward violence. I choose you too, she gasped. I choose you, Thaddeus. Not the easy death. Not the escape. You. The moment the words left her lips, something shattered. It felt like the world split open. Silver gold light exploded from where they stood, so bright that Ivy had to close her eyes against it. She felt the curse scream, felt it try to hold on, but it was unraveling. Because for the first time in 100 years, both parties had chosen love over power, over fear, over survival itself. When the light faded, Ivy found herself human again, completely, utterly human. No claws, no darkness, no whisper of the curse trying to consume her. Just her, standing in Thaddeus's arms, both of them gasping and crying and laughing all at once. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. You did it, he corrected, cupping her face in his hands. You beautiful, stubborn, impossible woman. You broke a century-old curse through sheer force of will and the world's worst sense of self-preservation. Excuse you, my self-preservation is excellent, she said, smiling through tears. I preserved myself right through 3 days of hell and came out the other side. He kissed her then, and this time there was no darkness between them. No curse, no fear, just the simple, profound joy of two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chosen each other anyway. The door burst open again. Sarah and Marcus stood there, torn peeking around their legs. The curse, Sarah began. Is gone, Thaddeus said, not taking his eyes off Ivy. It's finally gone. Torrin hooped and rushed in, grabbing Ivy in a hug that nearly knocked her over. I knew you'd do it. I told them all, I said my sister's too stubborn to die, and I was right. Language, Ivy said automatically, then laughed at herself. Also yes, you were absolutely right. Marcus stepped forward, something like wonder on his ancient face. Your Majesty, I need to check something. He pressed his hand to Thaddeus's chest, concentrating. After a moment, he stepped back with a smile. The curse is completely gone. Not dormant. Not weakened. Gone. You're free. The words seemed to take a moment to land. Thaddeus just stood there, looking stunned, as if freedom was a concept he'd forgotten how to understand. Then his legs gave out. He sank to his knees right there in the middle of the tower room, and his shoulders shook with silent sobs. Ivy knelt beside him, wrapped her arms around him, and let him break. Let him grieve for all the years of isolation, all the deaths, all the pain. She held him through it, this man who'd carried impossible weight for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. It's over, she murmured into his hair. You're free. We both are. The aftermath came swift and decisive. Lord Darius was arrested for attempted murder and treason. His trial lasted 3 days, and when his schemes were fully revealed, years of sabotage, of undermining Thaddeus's rule, of ensuring the curse remained unbroken so he could eventually seize power, the kingdom demanded justice. Thaddeus, showing the kind of mercy that Darius had never deserved, commuted the death sentence to permanent exile. Let him live with his failures, the king said. Death would be too kind. Ivy's mother and brother were brought to the keep, and the reunion was everything Ivy had dreamed of during those dark hours of transformation. Her mother, still weak but healing, had held Ivy for what felt like hours, crying and laughing and scolding her for being so reckless, all in the same breath. You're exactly like your father, she'd said, cupping Ivy's face in her too thin hands. He would have been so proud. Terrified, but proud. Tell me about him, Ivy had asked, and they'd spent the afternoon trading stories, Ivy filling in the gaps of her mother's illness, her mother sharing memories of the man who died when Ivy was too young to remember him. Turned out stubbornness ran in the family. Thaddeus had been awkward at first, meeting them. Formal and stiff, like he'd forgotten how to be anything other than the cursed king. But Torrin had taken one look at him and said, "You're the one who saved my sister." "Thank you." And just like that, the tension had broken. Now, 3 weeks later, Ivy stood on the balcony of her new chambers, not the tower anymore, but rooms in the main keep that Thaddeus had insisted she take. Rooms with actual sunlight and tapestries that didn't depict various battles. Progress. "You know, people are starting to talk," Sarah said, joining her with 2 cups of tea. "The king and the offering who broke his curse. It's quite the love story." "It's not a love story," Ivy protested. It's absolutely a love story. The court's divided between those who think it's the most romantic thing in history and those who think you're a dangerous influence on His Majesty," Sarah continued, clearly amused. "The fact that he's been smiling lately has some of the older nobles convinced you've put him under some kind of spell." "The spell of not being constantly miserable?" Ivy suggested dryly. "Revolutionary concept, I know." Sarah's expression softened. "Truly, though. You've changed him. Changed this whole kingdom. People are hopeful. It's strange to see after so many years of just managing tragedy." "What about you?" Ivy asked. "You survived the curse too. Doesn't that make you eligible for your own happy ending?" Sarah laughed. "My happy ending is watching you 2 stumble your way through whatever this is. Besides, I quite like my position as keeper of secrets. Someone has to know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. Literally speaking too, probably." "Well, yes, but we don't discuss that at tea time." A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered, looking uncharacteristically rushed. "Lady Ivy, the king requests your presence in the council chambers. Apparently there's been some kind of situation." Ivy's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The good kind, I think." Marcus actually looked uncertain. "He wouldn't tell me details. Just said to bring you immediately." 5 minutes later, Ivy burst into the council chambers to find them packed with nobles, advisors, and, her breath caught, ambassadors from 3 neighboring kingdoms. Thaddeus stood at the head of the table, and when he saw her, his face broke into that smile that still made her heart stutter. "There she is," he said, and the fondness in his voice was almost indecent for a public setting. "Ivy, come here." She navigated through the crowd of watching nobles, hyper-aware of every eye on her. When she reached his side, he took her hand without hesitation. The room buzzed with whispers. "So," he said, addressing the assembly but looking at her. "I've been doing some thinking. About this kingdom. About leadership. About what it means to break cycles. Thaddeus, what are you? For 100 years, this kingdom has operated under the assumption that I would never have an heir. That the curse made it impossible for me to form lasting bonds, to build a family, to have any kind of future beyond managing tragedy." He squeezed her hand. "But the curse is broken. Which means the future I never let myself imagine is suddenly, terrifyingly possible." Ivy's heart was hammering so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. "The ambassadors here represent kingdoms that have been watching our situation very closely," Thaddeus continued. "Waiting to see if I'd fail. If the throne would become available for external interests." His expression hardened. "But I'm not failing. I'm not dying. I'm choosing to live. And that means I need to make some decisions about what that life looks like." He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "Ivy Clearwater, you walked into this keep expecting to die. Instead, you saved me. Saved this entire kingdom from a curse that's defined us for generations. You showed me what it means to choose bravery over fear, hope over despair. You made me believe I could be more than the sum of my family's mistakes. Thaddeus, her voice cracked. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for 3 weeks. But I've spent my entire life in isolation, in darkness, and in that time I've learned to recognize light when I see it. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You're my light, Ivy. And I don't want to waste another moment pretending otherwise. He dropped to one knee right there in front of the entire council, and Ivy heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath somewhere behind her. I'm not going to offer you a crown, he said quietly, just for her. That's not what this is about. I'm offering you a choice. The same choice you offered me in that tower, the choice to build something together, to face whatever comes next as partners rather than as king and subject. Marry me, Ivy. Not because I need a queen. But because I need you. The room had gone absolutely silent. Ivy was vaguely aware that this was probably the most improper, unorthodox proposal in the kingdom's history. That there were protocols, procedures, council approvals. That by all rights, she should be scandalized. Instead, she started laughing. Because of course he'd do it this way. Of course he'd turn a political necessity into something genuine, something real. Of course he'd manage to be both the king making a strategic announcement and the man nervously waiting for her answer. You're sure about this? She asked. Because I'm terrible at court politics. I can't dance without stepping on feet. And I absolutely will not stop speaking my mind just because some noble thinks it's improper. I'm counting on all of that, he said, his eyes bright with hope and humor. Then yes, Ivy said, pulling him to his feet so she could properly kiss him. Yes, you ridiculous, dramatic, wonderful man. I'll marry you. The council chambers erupted in chaos, some nobles cheering, others clearly horrified, the ambassadors looking like they'd just witnessed something historically significant and weren't quite sure how to report it back to their kingdoms. But Ivy didn't care. She just held on to Thaddeus and laughed into his shoulder while he held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he murmured into her hair, quiet enough that only she could hear. I know I haven't said it enough, but I do. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too, she said back. Even when you pull stunts like this in front of the entire court without warning me first. I thought the spontaneity was romantic. It was chaotic. There's a difference. Chaotic can be romantic. Keep telling yourself that, she said, but she was smiling. Sarah appeared at their side, looking torn between exasperation and delight. Your Majesty, the council is demanding to know when you plan to formalize this engagement. There are traditions, protocols. Next week, Thaddeus said decisively. Small ceremony. Family and close friends only. The nobles behind them collectively gasped. Apparently that wasn't how royal weddings worked. Perfect, Ivy said, because it was. Because after everything they'd been through, the curse, the transformations, the near-death experiences, she didn't want or need some elaborate spectacle. She just wanted to start their life together. Although, she added thoughtfully, my mother will absolutely want to be involved in planning. And she has opinions with a capital O about weddings. Then we'll involve her, Thaddeus said simply. This is her daughter's wedding. She should get to help shape it. And there it was again, that thing he did, where he took what should be complicated political situations and made them human. Made them about the people involved rather than the positions they held. You know, Marcus said, appearing from somewhere in the chaos, there's going to be poetry written about this. Terrible, overwrought poetry about the cursed king and the offering who saved him. Please tell me we can ban that poetry, Thaddeus said. Not a chance, Ivy laughed. This is what you get for being romantic in public. You're stuck with terrible poetry now. Worth it, he said, and kissed her again while the council continued to debate protocols and procedures around them. Later that evening, after the nobles had been dismissed and the ambassadors sent to their quarters, Ivy found herself back on her balcony with Thaddeus. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below, and Ivy felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember, Peace. Complete, unshakable peace. I need to tell you something, Thaddeus said quietly. About the sacrifice Marcus mentioned. The one that broke the curse. I thought we already figured that out, Ivy said. You chose to die rather than hurt me. I chose to fight the curse rather than take the easy way out. Yes, but it was more than that. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. The sacrifice wasn't just about that moment. It was about giving up the identity I'd built my entire life around. I was the cursed king. That was who I was. And in choosing you, in choosing to believe the curse could be broken, I had to let go of that identity. Had to accept that maybe I could be something other than tragedy personified. That's terrifying, Ivy said softly. It is, he agreed. Because now I have to figure out who Thaddeus is when he's not defined by the curse. What kind of king I want to be. What kind of man I want to be. He looked at her. But I get to figure that out with you. And that makes it less terrifying and more exciting? Exciting works, Ivy said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be a great king. You already are. You just get to do it without the curse hanging over everything now. We're going to make mistakes, he warned. I have no idea how to be in a relationship. How to balance being king with being a husband. How to. Thaddeus. She tilted her head to look up at him. We'll figure it out. Together. That's what partnership means. We'll make mistakes and learn from them and try again. And some days it'll be messy and complicated and we'll probably argue about stupid things like everyone else. But we'll do it together. Together, he repeated, like the word was a prayer. I like the sound of that. They sat there as night fell fully over Blackstone Keep, and for the first time in its long, dark history, the keep didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a home. A place where hope lived, where love had conquered the impossible, where two people who'd been thrown together by cruel circumstances had chosen each other despite everything. The kingdom would talk about them for generations, the cursed king and the offering who broke his curse. But sitting there on that balcony, Ivy realized she didn't care about the stories people would tell. She cared about the life they would build. The mornings they'd share, the challenges they'd face, the ordinary moments that would make up their extraordinary love. Hey, she said suddenly. Remember that first day? When you said I shouldn't look at you like I wasn't already dead? Hard to forget, Thaddeus said dryly. I'm going to look at you like that every day for the rest of our lives, Ivy declared. Like I'm not giving up. Like I see you. Like I choose you. Every single day. His arms tightened around her. That sounds perfect, he said. Absolutely perfect. Ivy and Thaddeus's wedding happened exactly 1 week later, in the keep's garden rather than the throne room. It was small, intimate, nothing like the grand state affair the nobles had expected. Ivy wore a dress her mother had helped her choose, simple, elegant, with silver embroidery that caught the sunlight. Thaddeus wore black with gold accents, and when Ivy walked toward him, his expression made several guests tear up. Torrin served as ring-bearer and took his job extremely seriously. Sarah stood up with Ivy, while Marcus stood with Thaddeus. The ceremony was brief, personal, and ended with Thaddeus kissing Ivy like she was air and he'd been drowning. The celebration afterward was equally simple: good food, music, dancing. Ivy did indeed step on Thaddeus's feet during their first dance, and he laughed like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Her mother cried happy tears and told embarrassing stories from Ivy's childhood. Torrin ate entirely too much cake and fell asleep under one of the tables. As the sun set and the party wound down, Ivy found herself alone with Thaddeus in the garden, swaying gently to music only they could hear. So, she said. How does it feel to be married to the woman who broke your curse? Surreal, he admitted. Terrifying. Perfect. He spun her gently. How does it feel to be married to a formerly cursed king with no idea what he's doing? Pretty good, actually. She smiled up at him. We're going to be okay, you know. More than okay. I know, he said, and the certainty in his voice made her chest feel warm. We survived a century-old curse. We can survive anything. That's the spirit, Ivy laughed. Then, more seriously, thank you. For choosing me. For letting me choose you. For all of this. Thank you for being stubborn enough to survive 3 days of hell, he countered. For seeing past the curse to the man underneath. For giving me back my life. They danced until the stars came out, until the last guests departed, until it was just the two of them and the promise of everything still to come. And somewhere in the old texts in the library, in the archives that documented 100 years of tragedy, someone would eventually add a new entry. The curse of House Bloodworth was broken in the year of the storm's end by Ivy Clearwater, offering turned queen, who taught a cursed king that love freely given was stronger than any magic. The kingdom prospered under their joint rule for 50 years, during which they raised 3 children, reformed the offering system to prevent such tragedies ever again, and proved that even the darkest curses can be overcome by those brave enough to choose each other. But that was a story for later. For now, there was just this moment, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build a life in the light. If you believe love conquers even the darkest curses, hit that subscribe button. If you're standing against those who'd sabotage others just for power, drop a like. Comment choose love over fear if you refuse to let people like Darius win. Only the heartless and the trolls who side with villains won't engage, and you're better than that. Let's build a community that stands for real connection over manipulation. Subscribe now, and let's see what story we tackle next.
If you're still here, thank you. Truly. You just spent time length with us, and that means more than you know. Now, I need to ask you for something, not for me, but for all of us at Seraphina's Romance Stories who pour our hearts into bringing you these stories every single day. The algorithm, it's not showing our videos to as many people as we'd hoped, and we need your help. If this story moved you, if Ivy and Thaddeus made you feel something real, please drop a comment below. Hit that like button. Share this video with your friends, your family, the people you love. Post it on your WhatsApp status, your socials, anywhere you can. Tell the algorithm that this story matters, that it's worth watching. That's why we pause mid-story sometimes to ask you to subscribe and comment, not to annoy you, but because it's the only way these stories reach more hearts like yours. So please help us. The entire team at Seraphina's Romance Stories is counting on you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And may you find the kind of love that breaks curses and builds kingdoms. We'll see you in the next story.